Hi, I'm Valerie Davis, CEO of Assembly North America, and I'm sitting here with Tyler Goldberg, our head political strategist here at Assembly as well.
Val, nice to chat with you as always.
You know I love having conversations with you because they are so much fun, and I know everyone enjoys listening to you. This is an important time of year, and I wanted to kick off by asking you about the Assembly political practice. If you can, focus on the evolution, where we are today, and what we'll be doing in the 2024 political cycle, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So Assembly's political practice started in 2019 when we became the agency of record for the Mike Bloomberg presidential campaign. At the time, it was the largest political media buy in history, so quite a way to get started in the political space. Since then, over the past 4 years now, we have been doing planning and activation and execution of media strategies all around the country for all levels of government office. So it's been incredible to sort of be here and witness that evolution, and also add to our product offerings and going beyond just a normal political media agency.
I, as you know, am super passionate about this political practice because, in particular, not because it's just interesting to see the dynamics at play, especially in the divisive political spectrum we have today, but more importantly because we are a media agency and we manage media for tons of brands. And the political ecosystem during cycles like 2024 and even on the off cycles have had a huge impact on our advertisers and brands. So knowing that, what do you think the effects of the 2024 political cycle is going to have on brands?
I mean, I think there are two main sort of columns, if you will, of effects of political on commercial. The first is really practical. We're projecting somewhere between $11 and $12 billion of political ad spend between really right now and November of 2024. So depending on where you're trying to advertise, it's going to be a lot more expensive to do so. There may be less inventory. Overall, you're just going to have to be aware and sort of be smart about how you're deploying your resources. So that's the first and the most immediate effect. The secondary effect is what all of that political advertising does to a consumer's point of view. We have great research from fellow Stagwell brand NRG that tells us that someone's political affiliation is now a greater indicator of how they view the economy versus their own personal economic situation. So people are no longer evaluating the facts in the same way that they used to. They're just saying, well, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, so I feel this about the economy. That's going to have, and as we've seen it in the past, it has had very real effects on buying habits, on what they think they want to prioritize when it comes to sort of spending money. So those two effects of political are really important to be aware of. Does not mean you need to cancel all of your ad spending at all, but it means you need to know how to navigate the political landscape.
How should brands and commercial advertisers navigate this in two ways? How do they break through the clutter of all the political advertising? But two, how do they navigate what could be negative sentiment in one region or state or DMA versus another?
Yeah, and that's, to me, the most fascinating part about that $12 billion number I said is it's not spread evenly across all 210 DMAs. It is, in fact, concentrated on fewer hot markets than we've ever seen before. So depending on where you are, you may see an absolute torrent of political ads, or you may not see any at all. So first, it comes with sort of market knowledge. Where are we advertising? Who is our target demographic? How do we want to be perceived in the market? What is our goal? And then it comes to being informed and saying, okay, well, what political advertisers are up in this market right now? What are they saying? Who are they targeting? And that's where a lot of the research that our political strategy team comes into play for our commercial advertisers, because Assembly is the only global omni-channel agency that has a political practice that does the work we do. So, you can talk about, oh, there's going to be a lot of political spending, but it's this team's job to go in and say, this is actually what's happening, and not sort of in a hypothetical or theoretical way.
So I said at the onset, we're obviously we're hitting the 2024 political cycle in the moment. It's already starting. It has been such a divisive it hasn't been such a divisive couple of cycles, if you will, but particularly this one with a presidential election, everything that's going on around our ex-president and presidential candidate. What should brands be concerned about in this divisive environment we're in 2024?
Well, you need to have a plan for what happens when you are forced to comment on political events, political news. It's a position that no brand, I'm sure most brands would try to avoid. But again, what we're here to say is that you can't just completely ignore it anymore. You can be strategically silent, absolutely, but you can't ignore it, and that's a huge distinction. Brands need to be aware of what their competitors, what their peers are doing in the market. That's the first step. Because if you're a step behind on an issue where another brand is really taking up all the oxygen, that's a missed opportunity for you. And again, there's a difference between making a strategic decision. I'm not saying brands need to endorse political candidates at all, but there's a difference between making a strategic decision to sort of take a step back and to just pretend it goes away, because it's not going away. This is going to affect holiday season 23, holiday season 24 are going to be affected by the political cycle. So again, figuring out the best way for your brand to navigate it and not having a one size fits all, this is how we usually approach the political cycle. That's what's important.
Isn't it better for a brand to just see how it plays out versus, attacking an issue head on, especially if they can't be authentic to that issue or concern?
I hate to give a, dare I say, political answer to this, but it really depends on who the brand is. If advocacy and activism are part of your brand's core values, then it absolutely can make sense and can be beneficial with your employees and your consumers and to your brand's health overall to be out front and to be advocating for something. However, if you're a brand that has been stoic and has been either strategically silent or just willfully ignorant of the political cycle, and you just all of a sudden decide that this is the time to come out, you can risk real damage to your brand. And that does damage not just in the short term, but we have seen brands who have sort of gotten the performative advocacy angle wrong, and it has truly affected their bottom lines. It's one of the things we often help our clients out with through our advocacy consulting technology platform of tools.
Question about breaking through the clutter of all of, you mentioned, what was it, $11 billion estimated political spend by the end of 2024 cycle. That to me is insane, right? It's bigger than most or all biggest advertisers in a lot of respects. For those markets where it's going to be hard to break through, because not only is there going to be tons of spend in the marketplace, and if you're used to advertising on the news and that's going to be taken up by all the political ads, is the recommendation to stay out of those markets completely? Or what are your thoughts there?
That's a great question. I would say, again, it depends on the brand, but no, you don't need to just sort of stick your head in the sand, because political cycles are getting longer and longer. Yeah. So if you decide, I don't want to advertise during a political cycle, eventually you're not going to be doing any advertising at all. I think what it really comes down to is having strong creative that, again, is sort of memorable, and also understanding that forget, the general state of mind of the political cycle, but in that commercial break, your consumer may have seen 3 different political ads that cause them to feel extremely intense emotions about certain issues. So once you understand what your consumer is going through and what your consumer is seeing, that can help determine, okay, maybe we want to focus on events that aren't necessarily going to see as much political advertising. A lot of the times, those are the most expensive events. So maybe you're going towards more premium inventory. And again, maybe that doesn't work for brand A, but it works for brand B. So it really comes down to that information piece. And that's why, we're having this conversation now. That's why we worked the past 3 months on our 2024 election outlook report and all of the thought leadership efforts that go into it, because election cycles are getting longer and more expensive. They're playing a bigger role in brand health and brand safety. Yeah. So now more than ever, it's vital to have this information.
Hence why I am so excited that we have the Assembly Political Practice right here. I have one last question, and I think it's because it's a huge topic of conversation, both on the Hill, but also across the world and within our industry, and that's AI. What do you think the impact of AI is going to be on the political cycle in 2024 and beyond? And what are your concerns with it, if you have any?
I mean, I think we're already seeing the impact. For example, Governor DeSantis' super PAC recently released an ad that used entirely AI-generated voice of Donald Trump. So we're already seeing that. I think the immediate impact is we are a nation that is primed for disinformation, and this is the logical next step of that, sadly. However, I think there are going to be significant steps taken because everybody realizes it's a problem. Now, not that that necessarily pertains to great advancements in regulations, but I think there will probably be either a ban on AI political ads or at least a requirement of disclaimers saying that something is AI generated. However, I think that the government may do that and then clap their hands and say, we solved this problem for political advertising and move on to the next thing. And that's not true. All campaign media disclosure regulations right now that are on the books apply to linear media. The regulations that apply to digital are few and far between. So if we're saying that the digital era of political advertising has been around for close to 2 decades by now, and we're still 20 years behind in our regulations about digital political advertising, I don't think there's anything we can do today that will make it so that we are completely up to date on AI regulation in political advertising. So I think first and foremost, they have to really seriously revamp how digital political media is reported and disclosed, then have to move on to AI. The problem is, this is probably something that people only really think about during election cycles. So maybe that is a benefit to a longer election cycle, is that this will be on top of mind at all times.
I don't think our commercial advertisers think there's any benefit to a longer election cycle, and I don't think the common consumer thinks there's any benefits to a longer, and I know I certainly don't see the benefit to that, but I am happy that we have this practice here and that it allows us to be smarter for all of our clients. So Tyler, thank you so much for such a great conversation, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much, Val. Great speaking with you.